Well, good morning. Welcome, everybody. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Corliss.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Rouse.
Here.
Nash.
Here.
Stead. Here. Willett. Here. All present.
Thanks. Welcome, Eric. We've got interim budget changes first.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We have one IBC for your consideration this morning. It's a budget neutral item and represents the last IBC that we anticipate bringing forward related to the citywide reorganization that was included in the fiscal year 25 adopted budget. This IBC contains several actions, none of which result in additional general fund costs. It shifts five project management positions from the Information Technology Department to the newly created Office of Organizational Effectiveness, along with related maintenance and operations costs. Secondly, it creates a part-time accountant position within the Finance Department to support various accounting activities, including increased account maintenance, grant and bond activities, changing GASB standards, and process improvements in documentation. Finally, it would result in the reclassification of a business analyst position in the Information Technology Department to a business relationship manager. This new position will ensure appropriate service delivery to departments that rely upon IT's services. Cumulatively, these adjustments are supported by savings realized from other recent reclassifications in the finance and IT departments, along with finance department savings that were attributable to the recent department and citywide reorganizations. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor. Yeah, thanks so much for walking us through these interim budget changes. Just a quick question. In the IT area with the new business relationship manager, just to make sure I understand, this is internal facing and not an external facing position.
Madam Mayor, members of council, that is correct. This is an internal facing position that would support the various departments in their execution of IT goals.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the interim budget changes as presented by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, Clerk?
Nash.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Willett. Yes. Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
All in favor. Motion carries.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, next up, we've got a discussion on ACHD's 5-year work plan. It's great to see you both here. And Rebecca Phillips, welcome. Where's Bree? Do we have, oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. I'm not sure about your mic. Let's.
Okay, there we go. Let's try that again.
Great.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and council members. For the record, Rebecca Phillips, Transportation Planner with ACHD. I'm here before you today to present ACHD's 5-year plan and the details pertaining to the 26-2030 update. I will go over the schedule, the outreach efforts, programming objectives, and important key dates after I knock all of this stuff down on the podium. Okay. So we're excited to share that starting with this update, the plan formerly known as the Integrated 5-Year Work Plan will now be referred to as ACHD's 5-year plan. This was a collaborative change with an ultimate goal of simplification, ensuring a clearer and more transparent approach to our complex planning process. And as a refresher on our planning framework, the development of the 5-year plan is meticulously structured using various guiding documents and supportive efforts. The cities and counties develop their comprehensive plans that establish the land use for their areas. This information is utilized by Compass for demographic projections and the travel demand model. These projections and models inform the strategic plan for asset management and resource allocation. And combined with our asset management, ADA plan, bike master plan, neighborhood plans, and the CIP, they form the foundation upon which the 5-year plan is developed. Here we wanted to highlight the variety of project types that are included in the 5-year plan. The first two groups, roads and intersections and community programs, are the ones that we look to our partner agencies to prioritize each year. That is in order to help us on programming decisions and which projects may potentially move forward into the plan. Roads and intersections will be your major capital widening projects, intersection projects, and all of the projects included in the capital improvement plan. For community programs, those are your pedestrian enhancements, sidewalks, pathways, ADA upgrades, pedestrian crossings, bike facility projects, and traffic calming. ACHD also has additional categories that we use internally for our asset management and maintenance programs, and a variety of projects that may come to us from an immediate safety need that would come from our traffic department. So we often receive questions about our project selection and prioritization. ACHD receives project requests from numerous sources, including our adopted and existing plans, such as the plans previously mentioned, neighborhood plans, bike master plan, and the CIP. We also receive requests from our partners, the 6 cities, Ada County, the school districts, BSU and VRT, the public, and through our community application process. All of these projects are entered into our database and evaluated using our prioritization methodology. This was the methodology adopted by the commission, updated and adopted in 2022. The methodology examines each project against criteria such as distance to schools, civic facilities, transit, disadvantaged communities, average daily traffic, and notably the partner agency support, which is particularly relevant to you. After prioritization, projects move through several additional stages, and that's depicted in the image on the very top there. This includes scoping, and that examines project feasibility and cost, as well as factors such as commission direction, agency priority changes, immediate safety needs, and funding limitations before they can be included into the 5-year plan. Moving on to the schedule for the development of the 2630 update. This plan is an extensive year-long process, and throughout this period, we collaborate closely with all of our partner agencies at multiple stages and conduct thorough public outreach and engage in many internal discussions regarding programming decisions. I've included today's presentation in the schedule circled there in red. We are currently in the initial outreach phase, seeking public comments and working with all of our partners as they review their priority lists. We are offering presentations much like today's, as well as one-on-one meetings with all agencies to ensure they have the necessary information. Many have taken advantage of these opportunities so far, and we've had several touch points with Boise, so that's great news. Here is a snapshot of the ongoing public outreach that we have that's live right now. There's a few ways for the public to participate. On that first tab up at the top left corner, the public can rank and provide feedback on the currently adopted projects that are in the 25-29 5-year plan. On the second tab, pictured below on the right, the public can rank and comment on any project in the Beyond 2029 tab. And so that new tab that we created last year, that includes all of the projects in ACHD's database, including requests from partners, the public, elected officials, as well as adopted plans, such as the neighborhood plans and the bike master plan, and all of the future projects in the CIP 2020 update. So each of those tabs allow participants to click on their project of interest, read project details and schedule, and provide their feedback and ranking on a scale of 1 to 3. And so all of the feedback generated from this outreach will be sent back to the corresponding agencies to assist them with their priority list review. And to date, we have 519 comments, and we're on the downhill slope, so that's pretty good. Now to highlight a few of our early programming objectives for the first 2 years, 26 and 27, the 5-year plan will be developed with a balanced budget, which is normal procedure. This year, we will continue to approach project programming with enhanced flexibility, ensuring more transparency throughout our process and providing increased staff-to-staff meetings. As you might recall, last year, our main focal point was on inflation and how that has impacted project programming. This year, we're focusing on efforts to accelerate our partners' top priorities. We will also focus on ways to increase the alignment of the project phases and minimize those gaps. And overall, it is our main focus this year to examine the ways how we can continue to build more. That being said, I wanted to share a brief overview of the City of Boise's top project priorities in regards to your 2024 list. The district will be placing a greater emphasis on these high priority projects, aiming for a more strategic approach to minimize those gaps between the phase years and assign dedicated years to the phases as appropriate and as funding allows. This list here displays your top 3 rankings for the program projects, and we look forward to receiving your update for your 2025 list. We also wanted to highlight some of the exciting construction projects underway this fiscal year in 2025. State Street and Pierce Park Lane, Cole Road Maintenance Project, Victory to Overland. We have Bannock Street 16th to 12th, Orchard and Franklin, and State Street and 21st pedestrian crossings, also Beacon Street and Grant, and we have several bridge maintenance replacement projects going on. Now to go over those important key dates. As mentioned, we are currently in the priority or the agency priority list review stage and the public outreach stage. Once the public outreach concludes on February 5th, we will ensure that all comments for Boise are returned to you before you guys submit your final priority list. And that due date is March 19th. We will continue to be available for further meetings as we approach that deadline. On May 14th, we will present all the public and partner agency feedback from this initial outreach period to our ACHD commissioners. I will go ahead and send a reminder to Boise staff as we get closer to that date as well. And then moving into the final stretch, July and August, we'll release the initial draft of the 2630 plan and open it up for a second outreach period. And so although those due dates are a bit further out, I did want to make sure they are noted. And overall, we're planning for the regular adoption in September. And with that, I will be happy to stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
thank you for the presentation. It looks like there's some really great opportunities for the public to get in there and actually click on maps and prioritize things. I think in the past, there was maybe an opportunity for neighborhood associations to list some of their priority projects as well. Is that accurate? Am I remembering that well? And is that opportunity still available for a neighborhood association to say, these are sort of our priorities in our particular area?
Yes, we have several neighborhood associations that will submit lists and whatnot, and they'll meet amongst themselves. We also do have, we pull from the neighborhood plans, which is all of the different areas for the neighbors to talk about their project priorities. So those are in our system as well. And those neighbors can go into that Beyond 2029 tab and comment and rank those projects.
So it sounds like it's sort of on those neighborhood associations to sort of self-organize and finding those things, but there's not necessarily a specific effort of like us reaching out or you all reaching out and saying like, what are your top 5 or what are your top priorities?
So we actually do have several different liaisons for different associations, and they will often do presentations for them, or they will request us to be there. And we're certainly able to do that as well. Okay, yeah. And last year for the public open house, which was, it wasn't unfortunately this initial outreach, but for that open house for the initial draft, we did have the neighborhood in the know. So we had that whole group come in for our public open house and we presented and got a lot of participation from that as well.
Great. Thank you so much. I know that was one of the things that was helpful for me last year because I think as an individual, we all sort of have like our particular pet projects that we want to see get done. And it was really helpful, at least for me, from the understanding from our different neighborhoods of they know all these projects, but what are the ones that they really want to see as well? And so that was certainly something that was helpful for me in that process last year. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for the presentation. Just wanted to clarify public outreach. When they go onto this map, they can look, make comment, or rank projects that are already into this potential plan. They can't necessarily include new projects or things that are not on there. Can you just outline for those residents that may be going on there and looking like, oh, I want a roundabout here, or I want whatever, what that process is that happens before this? Just kind of outline that for them.
Certainly. Madam Mayor, Councilmember Morales, that's a great question. And so for this particular outreach, we do only have those two tabs. They can comment on plans that are currently in the plan, the 25 to 29 plan. And then they have that Beyond 2029 tab that includes everything we've received thus far from all different various sources. If they have a project that is not identified on either of those tabs, we do have some language and a button to click on the top of the map that says, do you not see your project? Click here to submit a project request. We also have a manual survey link on the bottom for those that aren't necessarily tech savvy and they want to just write something, they can do it that way as well. Yes.
Madam Mayor, thank you so much. Could you go back to the priority slide?
This one?
Keep going. It was the one that had State Street and
Like the Boise
yeah,
priorities?
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk to us and provide some clarity on the State Street and Pierce Park Lane? I know we've got a lot going on with State Street. Can you speak to that?
Speak to the
What
progress?
that project is,
Okay.
the State Street and Park Lane.
Yes. For that question, I'll have Ms.
Phone a
Christie
friend.
Inselman come up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Willits. For the record, my name is Christy Inselman and I'm the planning supervisor with ACHD. So that project is currently under construction. That project includes the full reconstruction of the intersection as well as a stretch of roadway. So it will extend. I don't have the extents, but I know it's not just the intersection. We knew that we needed to go down a little bit further and catch a little bit longer segment of the roadway. It's planned for construction to be completed in fiscal year 25. Sometimes there are delays that happen. But yeah, no, that it's full reconstruction, widening of that intersection, improvements on the sections of roadways that will extend on State Street. And I know one of those includes a couple side streets where we have some ADA issues. So it will include improvements there as well.
Okay. Madam Mayor, one more follow-up. One of the things we talked about last year was pedestrian sidewalks. I believe it was on the 5 Mile Bridge. Does that ring a bell? Do you know where that is in the plan?
Madam Mayor, Councilwoman Willits, we do have the 5-year overpass.
Yes.
That is in the plan, and
Okay.
I know we are currently working through that. I believe we have finished design on that project, and I think we may be in the right-of-way phase for that project. So it's working its way through.
Great.
We know that's a high priority for the city as well. So that is going through, and we do have full so you guys are all aware. So anytime we improve an arterial roadway, ACHA has a complete streets policy. So anytime we're widening a roadway, we're going to include infrastructure for all users. So that's ADA compliance, that's bike infrastructure, that's pedestrian infrastructure. So even over the overpass of 5 Mile, even though that's technically the overpass is under ITD's jurisdiction. So we work closely with them. Same thing with any overpass. So that will have full bike and ped infrastructure over the overpass on both sides.
Great. And Madam Mayor, one more follow-up. When you talked about partner support and how cities support ACHD, talk to us about what that means. Because I know you have a lot of folks who want things from you.
So, Madam Mayor and Councilman Willetts. So in regards to partner agency collaboration?
Yeah.
Okay.
That you mentioned that was part of your prioritization is how partners support your work.
Oh, you mean the objectives that I talked about? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that I heard in terms of how you prioritize is partner support. And you have, many cities, you got the county, you got lots of people who want things from you. And I wondered if you could talk to us about what partner support means to ACHD.
Yes, I got your question
Thank
now.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So part of our prioritization process is the different criteria that you see on the screen here. And there is a heavy weight to partner agency support. So when we get your priority lists, we take all of those into consideration. We will go and score each project on your list. I have last year's list in my hand. So we'll go through and score each of these projects that you're ranking. So projects 1 through 10 get points accordingly. If another partner agency has the same project on their list in the top 10, that automatically gets the full 15 points. And this partner agency support to us is that just elevates the project, right? And this is the new push for this year, this iteration, this update. We really want to make a conscious effort of putting all of our top partner priorities first. And so this will be looking at how we can do that, how we can minimize those phase years and get these projects underway.
Thank you. That is very insightful. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Madam Mayor, I might just have one more request. So when this comes back to us, was it March, April?
Your list is due on March 19th.
Yep.
And we will be back with the initial draft in the end of July.
Great. And I think maybe Tessa has something to say about that as well.
Well, and I'll
Mayor-
remind
Okay.
council that thanks, good to have you up here. There's a memo that delineates the process and the different touch points for the council to review with staff.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councilmember Halliburton. For the record, Tessa Grieger, Mobility and Public Spaces Manager. So we will be back to the council for the work session on February 28th. So right now we're working through the project prioritization list and identifying if there are any additional projects that we want to add, changes from this past year. And so working through that process, and then we'll bring that recommended project list to council on February 28th. Following that, there will be some additional time for council review and feedback, and then we'll have that list ready to go for the deadline for ACHD on March 19th. So those are the next steps on our end.
Perfect. Thank you. Last year when we had that meeting, one of the things I think that's helpful is that sometimes you just see the 5 projects there are priority ones and you feel like, well, that's not very much going on. We should be able to do more than this. But then we also see the next slide where all the projects that are already planned to get done this year, as well as the other list of projects that maybe aren't necessarily our requests, but are also being planned by ACHD. I think it's always nice for council to get a snapshot of like, yes, these are some of our priorities, but also here's the total work that's being done on top of that as well. So we can just get a better snapshot of all the projects that are out there and not just assuming that like, oh, there's only a couple projects that are getting done in this period of time. So that snapshot is really helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll
Thank
see
you
you
for
again
having us
soon.
today.
All right, Council President, I'll turn it over to you. And on this one, we've got a little bit more time than we expected. We'll do a check-in at 11:30 to see how close we are to the end, because I understand it's going to take a little longer, which is totally fine. And if we can't get it done before lunch, then we'll pick this up before the executive session during our regularly scheduled council meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, council. Excited to present to you council priorities for 2025. Appreciate council members working with staff to make your
Just a
priorities.
second, are you saying that you can't hear him?
Hello?
Oh, that's better.
I'll just speak closer. Okay. Excited to present these priorities. Thank you for council and staff working together to come up with these. I just want to invite council that this is going to be an open conversation. It would be my goal that from this public conversation that our staff produce a memo that we'll share with the mayor's office so we can work in collaboration on these priorities. So if there are things in my presentation that do not capture the priorities that you shared with staff, please interject. And I will defer to council members on particular areas of interest that you have highlighted that you might have more expertise on than I do. And so I'll call on you from time to time throughout my presentation. Just want to offer just a thank you to staff in general. Many of us have been part of organizations before where we feel like if we leave, the organization is going to go to hell. The city of Boise is not one of those organizations. The great work that we do is on the backs of staff, and we are very proud of the professional that we staff that we have across the city, both in council office and throughout the entire city. I want to give a special shout out to Amanda Brown, our chief of staff, who keeps us on task. She's the only person that can probably wrangle my schedule and get me to commit to meetings. Lauren Phelps in our office, who's been great with dealing with our constituent communications. I really wish I had her in the legislature. I think when Todd Achilles took over for me in the legislature, I had a few angry phone calls from him about all the voicemails that he found unanswered on a staff phone that I could never get access to. But we don't have that problem with Lauren. Anything from raccoon infestations that people call about, or dealing with serious public safety issues that people need a response to, she's been on point. We're also excited to welcome Emily Allen on our staff as a policy advisor. She started a couple weeks ago. It was a big priority for us to have a policy advisor. None of us are full-time, or we try not to be full-time in our city council position. So having that professional staff to collaborate with the mayor on advancing council priorities is going to be a great opportunity for us. In preparing these priorities, our own council priorities, we reviewed what the mayor had and her strategic priorities, and we love these. These are things that we can get behind. These are values that we share, and a lot of what we talk about today, though I break it down by department, fit very neatly into advancing these shared goals. As I said, we recently made a staffing hire this year to have a full-time policy advisor on staff. We're very supportive of that. One proposal that we're going to look at this year, both council members past and present have identified staffing needs that they felt like they would be interested in, having served on council, and both myself coming from the legislature, identifying resources that I had there that would be available here. One of the things that's come up pretty frequently has been interest in having legal advice that's specific to council. I think of recent decisions with the interfaith decision about making sure that we have the best available legal advice, and that sometimes, while we're very grateful for the support that we get from city legal, sometimes the interests of individual council members don't always align neatly with the interests of the city at large. So making sure that council have the best information, whether they want to craft an individual ordinance that may not be in line with the priorities of leadership or the mayor, or if they want to have specific legal advice on a particular motion. So that's something that we're going to evaluate this year. It would be my goal that if council does move forward with something like this, that it would be revenue neutral in our own budget, in our own office budget. But that's something that we'd like to consider this year. Additionally, council newsletters, we rolled these out this past year. That's something we're very proud of. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that. It's a way to engage folks. We live in an increasingly digital world, and it's tough to get folks' attention or to help them stay engaged on these types of things. So giving a paper newsletter that helps them connect with the city, and we're very grateful for the mayor's partnership on this. Would not be possible without her help there. And we really love the work that CE has done on these and helping council members connect with their individual districts. Additionally, on the budget, I'll have proposals later on this, but over the last year, we're very proud of the things that we did with the council contingency fund. Councilmember Stead was able to fund some safety signage along the green belt. Councilmember Morales, with the help of Councilmember Halliburton, was able to fund some much needed safety infrastructure in his district after a tragic death. Councilmember Halliburton is championing the Boise Youth Roadmap. And then we were able to, with the mayor's help, provide a lot of money towards pathways. And these are, I want to talk more about pathways and what we'd like to do with council contingency later in the presentation. But I would just invite council members. These are great ideas that you've had this year. That this is a bucket for all of us to advance these priorities of citizens. Let's keep relying on that to advance these meaningful priorities. I think we've done a good job with that funding this year, and we'd like to do it again. We'll have a more specific budget proposal related to council contingency in the next couple months as we start to build that budget. But looking back at what we've done, I think there's opportunities to build on that in the future. Another council specific priority that I'm interested in that I would like to have a conversation about, so would welcome your feedback. This is not something that I've talked with council members about, except for occasionally it comes up after a particular hearing. One element of procedure that kind of surprised me when I got to council was that I had to make a motion to get a substitute motion. And I think that that has been limiting in the amount of debate that we can entertain in council. It's my opinion that if you can get a second to your motion deserves to be heard. And if you can get 4 votes to your motion deserves to pass. I think our debate that we had around council pay was a great example of this. I brought a motion that was not supported by the majority of council. It was very important to me that we heard subsequent motions, and a subsequent motion won the day. I think this particular council has a good cooperative culture in making sure that folks get heard and that their ideas get heard. That's not always the case with deliberative bodies like ours, but I would like our procedure to reflect the culture that we've adopted. So I would encourage council members to think about that so that we can have, just because leadership has a particular motion that we have in mind does not mean that that should be the one that rules the day. So I would like to create more opportunities for that work together. Additional prior. Is that the wrong slide? Next slide. All right, go back to this one. All right. Top priority remains housing. I see this not only as like a present day issue that is on the mind of a lot of constituents and council members, but I see this personally as a generational issue. The increased housing costs that we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years are insane. I've shared it before. I'll share it again. I was 22 and I bought my first home, and I was a bank teller, and we sold that so I could go to law school. That was 10 years ago, and it was very easy for me to buy a home then. My wife was just starting out teaching. I was still in school. It felt like everything that we had been promised, like when it comes to the American dream, was in our grasp. And then during the time I was in law school and got out, the market dramatically changed to the point where I was making 2 or 3 times what I was making before and not able to afford a home. That kind of change overnight is so shocking. And we're going to feel the effects of that for a long time to come. And so that this is the top priority of both the mayor and council members is heartening to me. Councilmember Stead and I were recently in a meeting. I think the city hired a contractor to evaluate incentives in the modern zoning code. And they were asking us our perspectives on what was working or not working. And what was very, I think, a surprise to us is that Councilmember Stead and I had very different perspectives on what was going to do the most good in our housing crisis. But what was, while that was surprising, it was clear that we were both mutually supportive of the other's priorities. And that indicates an all of the above strategy. We have to have housing at every price point. We have to have that not only a market-based approach that's increasing our supply, where we've seen success in places like Austin that have brought down rents while rents elsewhere are climbing, places like Minneapolis that have adopted a similar modern zoning code, and they've had a lot of success there. But we also need that subsidy that the mayor has really made such a priority to push, and has been so scrappy in finding dollars to advance great projects like the Franklin. And we need public-private partnerships. We need developers willing to participate with us hand in hand on those. And we also need to remain committed to addressing issues that the market is not going to solve. There is not a financial incentive to house folks who are homeless. No one's going to do it but us. And we have to remain committed to that, even if we do not have as committed partners federally to advance those priorities. I would say council's goals, and we'll talk more about modern zoning code in a minute, but fostering a culture of continuous improvement. I think one priority that I would be interested in, we can address this more in a memo, is that study that we did in 2021, having regular reporting on identifying where we're at, so that we can understand, like have a pulse check as a council on how we're keeping up with demand for housing in the community. I think there was a lot of great work that went into that reporting then, and I feel like we've continued to push the ball down the hill on this, and we just got to keep that ball rolling. But we're broadly supportive of the mayor's housing agenda, and we endorse an all of the above strategy. There's a diversity of viewpoints on this council about how we tackle this crisis, but we're all mutually supportive of those efforts. These are additional priorities that didn't fall neatly into the rest of my presentation that I wanted to address. Wanted to give an opportunity for Councilmember Halliburton to talk about Boise Youth Roadmap and expectations for that program this year.
Thank you, Councilmember Nash, and I can keep this relatively short. Council did approve about $100,000 in funds for the Boise Youth Roadmap this previous year, and we are already launching those efforts. We've hired a contractor to help us with that effort, and pretty soon that will begin. And that really begins with outreach to both our internal staff, so we can make sure that we're catalog all the great things that we're doing for youth already, working with our different partners out there in the community to see what they're doing, and then working with youth to see the types of services that they're using, the types of services they want. The hope is that within that process, we're able to catalog all that great work, but also figure out where the gaps are. And one of the gaps in programming that we already know exists is probably for teens, and trying to figure out both age-wise, geographic-wise, where are the different areas where we're lacking different youth activities. And I like to think of the youth roadmap similar to our climate action plan, that this is a lens that we will be looking through a lot of the other things that we're doing at the city. So if we're developing a park, if we're approving or making changes to codes, or looking at the way that we develop apartments or streets, even the way that we're having youth get involved with our different departments here, like our climate action, our youth climate action team. I think that there's ways where we can look at youth as a lens for all the decisions that we make, and make sure that we're creating a place in Boise for youth to grow, thrive, and actually contribute to the city that they're trying to build. So we'll go through this process for the next year. There'll be opportunities for council to give input. There'll be opportunities for staff to give input, our public partners. They'll come in front of council a variety of different times, and we actually hope to have this plan approved by the end of the year. So it would come back before council with the opportunity for council to adopt, similar to like our climate action plan, as a lens that we move forward with and kind of see how we can continue to improve the great work that we're doing.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Halliburton. Additionally, This council remains committed to solutions around childcare. I think both Councilmember Willits and Councilmember Morales, in addition to the mayor's office, I believe have attended events across the country to understand best practices around this. I would invite, if Councilmember Morales, we didn't talk about this, but if you have any, or Councilmember Willits, if you have anything to add about this, we have no particular proposals today related to childcare solutions. We have had brief conversations with the mayor's office about working together this year on proposals. We remain committed to that, but we have nothing specific to propose around that today. Do you have anything to offer, Councilman Willits and Morales?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, President Nash, just to echo, this is important to this body. It's important to me. It's important to Councilmember Morales. And there's no silver bullet on this. Otherwise, it would have been done. And I think what we're looking for is feedback and things that we can do to lead as a city in this area, given the dynamics of our city, particularly, we're the largest city, we're the capital city, and our issues are going to be a little more complicated than some of our other neighbors. However, if we can provide that leadership, I think it would really change our state for the better for families.
Thank you. And I want to give a shout out to Emily Allen, who's now on our staff, who has a background in advocating for this at the legislature and was effective in helping us move those priorities when I was on JFAC there. And also in the mayor's staff, Kate Nelson, who's just been hired as a deputy chief of staff, is a great resource. So look forward to what they can accomplish together and coming up with proposals that we can advance these shared priorities. Finally, a chief budget officer position. I think all of you know how critical Eric has been to us in advancing our priorities through the budget. You need that person to be able to help you keep a balanced budget, but also keep the ball rolling on what you want to accomplish for the city. Since we hired Eric as the director of finance last year, his position has been unfilled. I was just told as of this morning that his former position has been filled, and that person will start on Friday. So just props to Eric for getting ahead of the game and accomplishing one of my priorities very quickly. Public safety, policing. We remain committed to increasing the number of police officers that are in this city. We know that comes at a cost, but it's a cost that we are willing to bear and to make sure that we're meeting the safety needs of our city. I will want to give some time to Councilmember Halliburton to talk about specific goals around behavioral response teams that we'd like to see in this next year's budget.
Yeah, this council and previous councils have done a lot of work to establish the capacity for 3 behavioral health response teams. And those positions are approved, they're available, but we've never had those positions fully filled. At one time, we had 2 different teams operating at once, but we never had all 3 filled at the same time. Now that we're closer to fully staffed for our police department, I think it's a priority to make sure that we get these specific positions filled. I think that we know, based off of lots of different reports that we've seen in the past, that there is a rise in mental health issues. Some of them result in violent situations. And we also know that our behavioral health response teams have been incredibly effective at proactively responding to these things. They're liked by the rest of the police department, and they're always busy. And 2 is great, but 2 really does limit the amount that they're able to respond to. And having those 3 teams filled, I think, is one of the top priorities that we've had for a couple of years and something that we're hoping to see done this year. If I can just add, I won't have to jump in again, there's a mention of alcohol compliance efforts here. One of the things that we've seen in our traffic fatality review task force is that the majority of the traffic fatalities that we're seeing and serious injuries are related to impaired driving. And what we're hearing from some of our alcohol compliance officers is that the answer isn't necessarily cracking down on DUIs. That would be more of a retroactive approach, but there's a more proactive approach, actually working with our bars, getting education that's out there, working with our liquor stores, and really cracking down on preventing bad behavior before it happens. And the need to increase our efforts in our ability to do that. it seems like we have had larger capacity and resources to do that in the past, that maybe shrunk during COVID, and trying to get that back up to where, yeah, or maybe before COVID, trying to get it back up to, I think we have one full-time officer just recently that we've moved into that. And I think that we could use quite a bit more. At least 2 officers would be able to make a big difference. And we may be able to do that internally within the already budget that exists, or it may be something that our council needs to explore.
Councilmember Halbert, my question around behavioral response teams, it seems like a goal that we've discussed previously is making sure a behavioral response team is available anytime there might be a call that they could respond to. I'm thinking about situations. I mean, you and I have been in critical incident reviews where a behavioral response team might have been appropriate at 2 a.m. in Southwest Boise, but there wasn't anyone available. Do we think that 3 teams is enough to cover like around the clock response, or have you had conversations with BPD that might lead you to believe that higher staffing levels would help us cover around the clock?
We know that even when we had 2 teams, and just to make sure that people are clear, this is a trained behavioral health expert who's not a sworn officer paired with a sworn officer.
I think this is a photo of.
This is a photo of one of our teams.
Yeah.
And so it combines that civilian expertise with one of our sworn officer who also has specialty in that area. So it does take a unique police officer and a unique person to want to do these positions. So they are challenging positions to fill. For just a short time, we had 2 going at once, and they were operating at max capacity. And you can think of all the hours in the day and all the times that these teams work, and that's not necessarily how crises unfold. And so, Council Member or Council President Nash, you're correct, and that we don't necessarily have somebody who can respond at all moments and at all times. I think 3 would get us to a level where we would be able to respond to quite a bit. But I do think that whatever we do approve, we need to make sure that we're kind of monitoring the amount of calls that they're going on, and also the amount of calls that they're not going on, but we wish we would have had somebody there to respond. And I think that that's something that we haven't quite gotten from the police department yet, is we know how many cases they're responding to. It's a lot. We show that they're needed, but we don't necessarily see what cases did our folks respond to that if we would have had a team available that we would have sent them to. And I think that that would be good information for us to dictate whether or not we would need additional positions in that area.
Yeah, I would augment this request to say, let's identify how we can have them on staff and available when they would receive calls, whether that's we need to double up during the days or have someone available at night, with the goal of having that response available whenever we need it.
And to be clear, we do have 3 teams approved at this point, and what we would like to see is those 3 teams staffed. So if we were looking for an additional team, that would mean that council would probably need to be approving or moving around funds to make sure that we had the ability to do that. But we do have 3 teams available already, 3 positions approved. We just need to fill them.
Okay. Sex abuse prevention. This is a little heavy topic and a little personal. Recently, there was an individual who was a paraeducator at a school, Valley View Elementary, where my wife teaches and my kids attend, who was a suspect in a child sex abuse case. And that individual took their life when police responded. And have had conversations with both BPD and the school district, and the school district has been a great partner in working with the city. And I've been very impressed with BPD's response, and that collaboration between BPD and the school district is very important to shine light and prevent these cases and make sure that when they do happen, that folks are brought to justice. In conversations with BPD around this, and both current BPD officers and folks that have served in special victims in the past, we currently have 9 detectives in special victims unit, which is good. Maybe need for more, but the one thing that really stood out to me in the conversation is that we currently only have 1 detective that deals with internet crimes against children. And I asked, what is the demand around this? If some of you may recall a presentation by Chief Weiniger talking about how violent crime had dropped in the city and internet crimes are going up through the roof, both crimes against children, but also internet fraud crimes are really on the rise. And we have one detective that deals with all of these things. And I asked the lieutenant and the captain, what would be the demand or what is the existing demand? What is that workload like? And the response was, I could have 6 people working full time on internet crimes against children, and they would be busy issuing warrants. And that was really startling to me. And I think the way crimes are committed and investigated are very different today than they were 20 years ago. And we need to make sure that our institutions are keeping up with this. As you know, I've been very strong advocate for adding traffic safety officers. But when I heard that, it kind of made other priorities that I have related to this kind of fall away. We not only do we need sworn staff, but what would be helpful would be civilian staff that have a professional IT background that can serve these functions, both for internet fraud crimes, but also in child sex abuse cases where they're having to review, like doing digital forensics. These are tough jobs to fill. You could go work at IT at Micron, or you could do this, which is very, very tough on folks. And it requires a very specific skill set that can be expensive, but I think it would be in our interest to explore both civilian and sworn staff when it comes to our special victims unit and especially internet crimes. Traffic safety remains a top priority. Folks talk about it all the time to us. We want to make sure that we are adequately staffed there. I think what would be also helpful to us, we'd like to collaborate with BPD on some type of regular reporting schedule to understand what traffic enforcement is looking like, whether that's like a quarterly report or biannually. We would like to work so that we have our finger on the pulse of what traffic enforcement looks like in the city. How many of our these incidents or citations are being issued by general patrol staff versus the traffic units, what staffing around the traffic units looks like, how that's changing. And we would like a better handle on that. So coming up with some type of reporting schedule between us and BPD on this, I think would be helpful in understanding the scope and nature of the problems we face around traffic safety. Councilmember Halliburton spoke about alcohol compliance, so I won't belabor that. We have been having conversations with the mayor's staff. When we have multiple special events on a weekend, it puts a lot of pressure on our officers, especially in overtime, which we're trying to make sure that our officers are not overworked. And at some point, we're going to get to a level where we just need a dedicated special events unit. And council is aware of that, and we want to be supportive of our special events to make sure that they have the support they need. Additionally, the Office of Police Accountability, we love Nicole McKay. We think she's been a great asset to the city. I've been very impressed with not only the professionalism of the work she's doing, but also the relationships that she's been able to build with law enforcement. I'm surprised the number of times that we are in a critical incident briefing where we're like looking for things that could be improved so that we can have a better public safety response for our community, but also making sure that our officers are protected in that same time. And there's a high degree of overlap in the best policing practices that promote officer safety, but also protect our public. Nicole has been a great partner and resource in making sure that our public is safe and informed about how their officers are carrying out their sworn responsibilities, but also making sure that we're implementing best practices to keep our officers safe and the public out of harm's way. All right, I think what I'd like to do, Madam Mayor, is get through this fire slide and then come back if that works. Completion of Fire Station 13. Talked to Eric this weekend, and the fire station, we actually already funded that in this last round of budget. So we're covered for the year on that, but we look forward to completing that and having that ribbon cutting or I guess doing the hose thing this year. Councilmember Halpern, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, no comments on that one. It's something that this council, previous council have worked really hard on. So we're excited to see this one come to fruition. My guess is at some point there will be some additional funds asked for that area if we are looking for combining a police substation there or an office for police, which are already sort of working on incorporating an additional land that's available at that site. So that may just be something that's on our radar.
Okay, thank you. Wildfire preparedness. This has been a hot topic among council members since the LA fires. I think we're looking for an opportunity to have some type of collaboration, maybe a work session or more that demonstrate, but also explore the city's preparedness as it relates to wildfires. I know Councilmember Stead has been working with a group of neighbors that have done their own preparedness in conjunction with Boise Fire. Councilmember, do you have any thoughts you want to share on this?
Yeah, just in addition to other efforts by the city, I know the neighbors in the Warm Springs Mesa neighborhood have dedicated tremendous amount of time and resources to advancing their own neighborhood's preparedness. And after years of collaboration, we're able to pull off a multi-agency drill last August. And they're generously willing to share those learnings with other neighborhoods. I think in Boise, we have this unique geographical setup where we have wildland to the north, east, and south of our city. And so I want to support those neighbors and work with Boise Fire to figure out how we can continue that collaboration and education to distribute that information among other neighborhoods.
Any other council members? I know there's been a lot of interest. Any other council members want to weigh in on what information you'd like from the city when it comes to how we're preparing for wildfires? And yeah, I know there's been a lot of interest. Council member?
Yeah. One of the things that we learned about last year was Idaho Power's plan to shut down power in the case of a wildfire. And, that seemed scary, but also completely plausible. And I think it's something that we should really note about what happened in Southern California, because there were thousands upon thousands of people who did not have power for days, even if they weren't directly affected by the fire. So I think that's something we need to do a better job of educating our residents on what this could look like. I'm so thrilled to hear that, neighbors who are close to wildlands are obviously more keenly aware, but this could affect our entire valley. And I think we need to be transparent about that.
Thank you. Representative Nash, one question, I think information we'd like to see is, as I understand, there are 3 wildfire trucks that are staffed at various firehouses in Boise. It'd be nice to know if we had information on how often they are dispatched for wildfires and maybe which geographic areas they go to throughout the farthest areas of the city in the south and northwest. So we have a better understanding of what is happening today and how often they're utilized.
Yeah, I think additionally, a better understanding regional responsibilities that Boise Fire may have. I know at least when it comes to hazmat, we have very broad reach, McCall, way into the Magic Valley on hazmat response, and better understanding if we have similar contractual obligations with the state or some type of agreements or to providing that response. Additionally,
Well, and on that issue in particular, for instance, the Valley Fire was on state land. They have an agreement with BLM for coverage, but it was also Boise that was providing coverage. The state was not involved in that.
Yeah, and I do want to give the mayor credit here. I clapped back at a individual on Twitter that was lumping us within the LA response, and we had a meeting. I think Deputy Chief Gervais was presenting, and we were peppering with questions that were adjacent to types of LA fire things, and the mayor was like, well, we need to do this, that, that, and she just rattled off 100 different things that demonstrated her command of how we prepare for these types of things. So I think we want to demonstrate that to the public, but also make sure council has a good understanding of what we've been doing, not only from like a direct fire response, but also from a land use. And we'll talk about foothills in just a little bit later this afternoon. But we really want to make sure that there's been a good culture of land use planning in foothills, and from my perspective at the city, that has largely been informal and just good instincts about how to do land use planning. I mean, coming from Utah, we have much better land use planning when it comes to the foothills here than we do down there. And I want to make sure that council understands what has been done to make sure we're not exposing the city to too much risk when it comes to these types of things. Additionally, we'd like to explore an electric vehicle pilot. We've had conversations with Chief Niemeyer about this. I think there's outstanding questions on where our technology is today and can that meet all of the needs for our first responders. I think with the industry coming out with things like the F-150 Lightning, there are more opportunities to explore when you're getting over 300 and 400 miles of range on some of these vehicles, that there might be opportunities to explore how these new technologies can help our firefighters. So we'd like to explore an electric vehicle pilot with fire. Additionally, 4-person staffing. The council remains committed to 4-person staffing at our fire stations. We understand that this adopting 4-person staffing across the city is not a quick process. What we would like to do is turn this from a strategic priority to something that's more actionable, committed to a timeline. Like I said, we understand this cannot happen overnight, but we want council to be in a position to say, hey, this costs $700,000 to, or whatever it may be, to take a station to 4-person staffing. Maybe there's some years we can do one, maybe there's some years we can do multiple, maybe some years we can't do any, but we want council to be in a position to understand that, hey, there is a timeline here. I don't know if that's 5, 10, 15 years, but something that we can commit to and hold ourselves accountable to making sure that we're checking benchmarks when it comes to 4-person staffing. We understand that both our staffing needs related to 4-person, but also a station in South Boise are like the next steps in helping individuals and businesses lower their fire insurance rates. And in addition to 4-person staffing, the South Boise Fire Station, we feel that the Murillo, which we haven't, the Murillo Farms decision, which we still have not approved those conditions. We expect those to come back next month. One of the open-ended conditions on that particular project was to make sure that the developer comes back and we negotiate what fire station plan funding looks like there. So we would encourage staff to work with developers in that area, locale. I think there's a BVA development there as well that has donated property, to put together a capital plan for something like that, but also look forward to how we might fund that from a staffing perspective. Once again, we understand that cannot happen overnight, that these are competing priorities with other interests we may have both in the citywide budget and within the staffing budget, but we think this is an important priority to not only meet our fire needs, but help residents across the city lower their insurance rates in a time of some economic instability as it relates to prices and cost of housing generally. Finally, I would like to touch on West Boise fire response. I'll kick this to Councilmember Corliss, and probably if we want to go to the next slide, there's a great visual here of, I think, some things she'd like to talk about there.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a map of fire hydrants in Boise, and as the topic of fire have been a pretty hot discussion. In looking at this map, you can see that there's a hole in West Boise. That's basically the area from Victory to Fairview and 5 Mile to Cole that's has minimal fire hydrants. This is an issue that has been inherited by the city of Boise due to development plans not requiring them decades ago. And now we're taking a look at what is the best way to support that area. Installing water mains and fire hydrants is almost cost prohibitive. They're hundreds of thousands of dollars. This area is supported by Station 14, who's done a fantastic job in mitigating any issues. One of those is by having a water tender at that station that has 3,000 gallons of water on it. The concern is today when there's a call out, they have 3-person staffing. And when that call comes out, those 3 people are on the fire engine. And there's not always somebody to staff that water tender. Apparently a position had been there prior, but had been somehow through the system no longer there. So the concern is twofold, is that one, when there's a call in the area, there's not adequate personnel in the water tender. They have to call another station. That station has to bring somebody out so that they can drive that water tender. Second issue related to wildfire preparedness is they do have a wildfire truck and they do use it quite frequently. And when that truck is staffed by 1 person out to an area, it drops that fire station to 2-person staff, meaning for any call, EMS, fire, anything, they cannot leave the station because there's not enough people for the fire engine. So the discussion here today is to look at how do we best minimize this and how do we best, I think this is maybe ripe for the city and the fire department to consider staffing as a priority to the 4-person staffing model.
Thank you. And I would just add that this ties right into comments about 4-person staffing, where we've had conversations publicly with fire asking them for data-informed decision-making when it comes to prioritizing next stations, but also where we're implementing 4-person staffing. And we would want to have, if we have an actionable financial plan for implementing 4-person staffing, it can help us understand as a council how slow or fast we need to move up different stations in our budget planning. I see this one as a critical need. If we had a good idea of when 4-person staffing would be realistic at a station like this, I think it would really much help us in setting our own council priorities about, where, how quickly do we want to bring a fire station online versus making sure that one is staffed in a place like this. So having that information available to us and a plan with the budget team, I think will be very helpful in our setting our future priorities. So with that,
Madam Mayor, I do got
yeah.
a comment about that. Councilmember Nash and Councilmember Corliss, thank you for bringing it up. Wasn't aware of that sort of hole with all those dots. I just want to make sure that we also are working with Veolia on this, because Veolia is the one who we need to be partnering with to get some more fire hydrants in that area. And I'm not saying like don't pursue all the things that you mentioned, but let's also make sure that Veolia, who we work with on a lot of different things, is getting fire hydrants in an area that needs to have them, and the joint responsibility that exists there. And if I could, just a couple more things about police and fire. One of the things that this council has inherited is a lot of work from a previous council who went through some different challenging times. I want to make sure that we continue to work on some of the things that we have been working on in both of those areas. And one is that for a long period of time, our fire and police have known that they need to make sure that their officers and firefighters are reflective of our population here in Boise. I think they've been doing a really good job in that in a lot of areas. And the biggest gap that we continue to see is really with female firefighters. And our fire department especially has done a really great job with their Ignite boot camp in recruiting more female folks to get interested in fire as an occupation. And it's full every single time, like bursting at the seams. And so we know that it's popular. We know that this is something that we could be looking at when it comes to police as well, and looking at additional resources or resources that they may already have to expand those efforts. And if we could make sure that we're working on a more reflective fire department, police department, we know that that's good for our community. Also, we've consistently invested in mental health and wellness for all of our first responders. We know that that's something that our fire department, police department are continue to be interested in doing, and that there's potentially extra resources that may be needed to provide them with the ability to do that. And they're not the only department at our city who sometimes operates as first responders. I also think about our library as well, and anything that we're learning for mental health and wellness from our fire and police, we need to make sure that we're incorporated in other areas of the city. And then finally, we've been told that we need to continue to invest in training for our police and fire. And that includes technical training that we've done pretty good on in the past, but professional development as well, and making sure that we're growing people within our police and fire department as leaders within their teams. And so I want to make sure that that's something that we continue to move forward on, because we know that if we continue on some of these things, it has positive effects all throughout both of our different first responder departments.
And if I can, I just want to add one other comment on Station 14 that I forgot to mention. In addition to having a fire engine, the water tender, and the brush truck, they are also the second hazmat team. 1 of 2 hazmat teams for the city of Boise are housed in Station 14. So they do a lot of work there, a lot of really great work.
All right, we'll be back for our council meeting at noon. Thanks, everybody.